Okay, perfect. So before we start, I just want to make sure I have all my information straight. So is the email that we've been using, is that still the best email to your Gmail account? Is that still the best one to keep on file?
You know, Ryan, it's not. I have an email like my first name, last name together at hotmail.com.
Okay, so it's just your full name at hotmail.com.
Exactly. You have full name at hotmail.com, yes.
Okay, so let me make a note of that now. Give me 1 second. Okay, perfect. I made a note of that. And is this still the best phone number to keep on your file?
Yes.
Okay, and you're currently located in Denver, Colorado?
That is correct.
And you indicated you were open to relocation. Is that still accurate?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So at this current time, our biggest opportunity for headcount is in South Carolina. Is that of interest to you?
You know, never considered North Carolina, but why not? You know, I worked for Cisco, and we had offices in RTP. Are you guys in Research Triangle Park?
Yeah, so it's actually South Carolina.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sounds good.
And
yeah,
it's Monk's Corner is the name of the city.
Okay. Yeah, I'm open to
they're making
relocation.
a big push. It's one of their newest and most technologically advanced data centers, and they're making a big push starting next week. So I'm really glad that you're open to it.
I am.
Okay, perfect. So before we start, you have a master's in computer networking. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And then looking at the resume, let me just open it back up here. You are currently at Verizon, correct?
That I was at Verizon for 3 years until recently.
Okay, so until recent. So can you just give me a quick rundown of what you were doing there at Verizon?
Sure. So at Verizon, we built a nationwide network. Verizon was building they had like a couple of parallel networks, and all of these networks are nationwide, spanning the whole country. So I worked in a team of 4 people, and mostly people who are highly experienced. And there's 4 of us, and the job was, it was a contract, it was a 3-year contract, and the job was to build a nationwide network. And the work involved everything. For example, a typical day at work would be, I'll say I want to build the Dallas site, for example. So I'll build a configuration. I'll look at the existing network, understand how the network is configured, make platform recommendations, decide which vendors we want to work with, which platforms. So I make the platform recommendations. We get the equipment. Then I build the configuration. And after the configuration is complete, and all this work is done independently, after the configuration is complete, I work with the on-site people, and we schedule a maintenance window. Then I'm working with the on-site people. So I'm configuring the devices remotely, and they're making the connections and everything. So then we test. We make sure that the network is live, and then I send a message, send a broadcast email to my managers, directors, VPs, everybody, and say, hey, the site is successfully completed. And then tomorrow, I build another site. And then the day after, another site. And there's 4 of us, and we're mostly working independently. The first month or 2, it was a lot of training, because most people in the team, like I said, all of them, they had a team of 4 people, and they had 30 years of experience, more than I do, although I'm experienced myself. But these are guys who are like highly qualified, highly experienced. So the first 2 months was a lot of training. And then the rest of the over 2.5 years, it was mostly working independently. So we're not talking about operations where I'm managing a network that's already operational. I'm talking about building a brand new network, rolling traffic over to that new network, testing the network, ensuring that the network is live, and then moving on to another site tomorrow. So and the whole country was completed that way. And I would say that was the most valuable experience in my career, because most of my jobs in the past, I focused on a design role, or I focused on a support role, or I focused on an operational role. The Verizon job involved everything. So building the site from the very beginning, ensuring the site is live, and then also supporting that site afterwards. And at the same time, building new sites every day. So I would say we built, like earlier in my career, I cannot say I built a nationwide network. But after Verizon experience, I can say that because we built the whole network.
Yeah, absolutely. And you were kind of talking about this before, but can you kind of expand on your experience training or mentoring other members? You were saying something about the purpose of recording this call was kind of speaking towards that.
That is correct. Yes, I recorded the call because I wanted to kind of share it with my students tonight in class. And I started a boot camp, a training program where I connect with people, entry-level people who have absolutely no background in technology. And they're usually people who are highly qualified. I'm from Sudan. They're mostly from Sudan who came to the States, and they're highly qualified, but they couldn't really translate their experience to the U.S. market. So I worked with them, and I helped them get the Cisco certification. And my program is we're not just focused on getting them certified. Like people who complete my program, all of them, every single person who completed the program in the past. I started this 13 years ago, but it started really taking off the past year. That's why I took a break from Verizon, and I decided to focus on it for a couple of months. So the most recent class, I had probably over 200 people registered for the class. And every single person who completed the program is working specifically at America's top 15 companies today. And keep in mind, these are guys who come to me with absolutely no experience, just doing a casual job. And every single person, it takes commitment. Some may not complete because it's a 7-month program, but every single person who completed in the past over 10 years is at America's top companies. We're talking like Facebook, Verizon, Google. I have one of my students at Google, and Tesla, the car company, and so they're for someone who's beginning, just a beginner, someone from a casual job, in 6 months they're at Google. That's success, in my opinion. So I'm very happy. I feel I'm making a big difference, and so I took a break from Verizon, and I think it was the right decision because I was able to grow that boot camp, and I was able to kind of connect with more people, have more people come to the class, even improve my curriculum. Like my goal, and also I work with them on projects. After they complete the program, I identify some of the projects that I really learned from throughout my career, and then I have them also work on these projects. So they have the certification, they have the knowledge, but they also gain the real-world experience from the program. And so that's what I was going to say something else, but I kind of went off on a tangent. But so that's the summary of the program.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's great. And throughout your career, what would you say?
Here's what I wanted to add. Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
It was a great experience. It was the right decision to focus for the past couple of months. But at the same time, I learned more, and I can bring more to my classes. My classes are at night, 8 to 10 p.m. I learn more when I'm working in a large-scale environment. So a place like Google would be ideal for me. I can learn, because it's a large-scale network, and I can learn more than anywhere else, and then I'll have more things to teach my students.
Sure.
And one of my, and I can even share with you like a YouTube video later. One of my students who worked at Google, I kind of interviewed him, and like it was very encouraging and inspiring to the current students in the class because they could see the results. So
absolutely. Absolutely. So that's wonderful. Yeah, and you're totally correct about Google would definitely expand what you're able to do. So I understand what you're saying. But tell me, like, throughout your career, then, what are the top 2 or 3 things that you've enjoyed doing the most? I know it's probably hard to narrow down, but what would you say?
I would say the top 2 things. Like there's 2 things that like if you ask me to identify like the highlights of my career, the most rewarding experience. 2 things. One is I like to go in depth, and that's kind of how I train my students today too. I like to go in depth. If I'm reading a book, I'm learning a technology. Learning the amount that will help me pass the certification is not enough. I want to go deeper and deeper and learn more. And what I'm realizing is there's really no limit. You can go really deep into any specific technology. You can almost be expert in one specific technology. So when I worked at Cisco, that's kind of my nature, and I like to really go into the details of everything. Yeah, you probably know this. You're a recruiter, and you guys are good with people. They probably notice the level of detail even in my conversation. That's just my nature. So when I was at Cisco, I had a customer. He said like the BGP, he had an issue with BGP and route reflector, and him and I worked together on a WebEx call, and we couldn't identify the issue. I connected with the business unit. These are the developers that write the software and on the Cisco devices. And they said, we don't have bandwidth. We can't help him because his network isn't down. He has a question, but his network is operational, and we have other priorities. I didn't want to go to the customer, although I could have, but I didn't want to go back to the customer with that kind of answer. So I went home, and for 3-4 days in a row, I stayed up until 3-4 in the morning, and not only reading books, but reading the standards, reading the RFCs, specifically sections relating to BGP and route reflection. And I discovered that Cisco's implementation, although it works in BGP and route reflection, it's not 100% in line with the standard. So it was a situation where I'm dealing with a customer who's far more knowledgeable than myself and then my business unit, my developers, when it came to standards. So I called him and I said, you're right. Obviously, I have to present our product well. I told him, I said, our devices work, they're operational, they're just not 100% in line with the standards. And that's all he wanted. He was just looking for an answer because he wasn't seeing the output he expected. And the customer was very happy I was able to build a relationship with him. And since that day, any call it was Tata, an ISP in India. Since that day, anytime we get a call from them, I was the person best suited to answer that call because I built that relationship. He was one of their senior people. So I would say what helped me in my career are 2 things. At Cisco, in the high-touch team, it was a team of mostly highly experienced people. So technically, I wasn't team of 15 people. Technically, I was number 3, number 4. But as far as customer satisfaction, I had the highest customer satisfaction. So I would say 2 things. The desire to dive really deep into the technology that interests me. And 2 is communicating with customers, be willing to go the extra mile, be willing to provide regular updates, and just enjoying the conversation with the customer and listening to them.
Absolutely. And Ihab, if I was to give you 3 categories, hardware, networking, operating systems, and I was to ask you, let's say, to rate yourself, beginner, intermediate, or expert, what would you say starting with hardware?
With hardware, for example, when I started in networking, and that's the main reason I joined Cisco. Like I was at an ISP before Cisco, And I learned all the networking technologies, the protocols, the routing protocols, the configuration and all that. But I wanted to learn more about the hardware. And the hardware is typically vendor proprietary information, meaning if you want to learn more about the hardware, for example, if we're focusing on Cisco, if you want to learn more about the hardware, that's not something you're going to learn on certification or on a book to work for the vendor. And my experience at level 3 before Cisco was a rich experience, but the main reason I went to Cisco was to learn about the hardware. And I learned a lot. For example, not only the configuration and in fact, that was the focus of my class last night. I was teaching them the hardware, although to pass certification, you don't really need to do that. You don't need to learn the hardware. But last night, I was focused on like Bootstrap Image, which is a software in Cisco. I was focused on the iOS. I was focused on the RAM, the NVRAM, the memory locations, and even the flashes. So specifically, my class last night was heavy focus on software and hardware, although that's not even part of the curriculum. So obviously, I'm expert in networking, but I learned quite a bit on also, specifically when it comes to Cisco, I learned a lot about their hardware and their software. For example, when I worked at Cisco, we learned hardware troubleshooting, meaning like, let's say there's a line card on a router that had 48 ports, but port 1, 2, 3, 4 were not working. That's typically an indication to a shared piece of hardware between the first 4 ports. So if port 1, 2, 3, and 4, you have 4 servers connecting to port 1, 2, 3, 4, they're not working. The rest of the 44 ports are working fine. That's an indication to a hardware issue and a hardware that's shared between these 4 devices. So Cisco have what they call hidden commands. These are commands that via certain procedure you can enable them, and through these commands I'm able to kind of look at the internal components, and you have internal components like Rohini, Medusa, things that you cannot learn from a book, but like deep hardware knowledge. So I learned to kind of go deep and look at the hardware, and many times I'll identify the issue as being an internal component resulting in the network issue we're experiencing, which has nothing to do with networking, but we were highly trained at Cisco to kind of deal with the hardware because we were vendors. We also learned like things like RT inbound, like many hardware troubleshooting procedures that are not like specifically on Cisco books. They don't even talk about them on the books, but these are things that you learn from people who are highly experienced, whether they work for Cisco or they work on another company. These are the kind of things you learn from senior people, and they trained us well when it comes to hardware.
Okay, so what would you say? Well, if you had to rate yourself in that category?
I would say when it comes to Cisco technologies, I would say also expert. Okay. And obviously, if I decide to learn hardware from another vendor, I'll kind of apply the same process. And since I was able to learn Cisco, I'll be able to learn other things. But to be accurate on my answers, when it comes to Cisco specifically, I would say expert, networking, hardware, and software.
Okay. And how about operating systems?
The expert in iOS, and not only iOS. For example, on Cisco, many people know iOS. Like when you say Cisco router, what comes to mind to most network engineers is the Cisco iOS. But I dive deep into the Cisco devices where I know it's not only the iOS. A Cisco device, yes, can work iOS, and that's 99% of the time, and that's what most people know. But the Cisco device will also work Bootstrap Image initially. And it will also work in ROM-on mode, and that's something that many people haven't even heard of. ROM-on mode will help you. Yes, the router may not be very efficient in terms of forwarding traffic, but you can reset passwords, you can reset the configuration registers, you can do a lot of things on the ROM-on mode. So you have the Cisco iOS, which most people are familiar with, but you have bootstrap image, which is an initial image. You have the ROM mode, so the router can be completely on ROM 1 mode. And then you have, you even have a setup mode, which Cisco doesn't even, I don't think it's even part of the Cisco curriculum today, but they also have a setup mode where it's a very unique operating system designed for very beginners. Someone with absolutely no knowledge in Cisco technology can still configure the router through the setup mode. It's ideal for newbies, for beginners.
Okay. So so if you had to pick between the three, what would you say is your strongest of the three categories?
The strongest, I would say, iOS, but still the other three, I consider myself experienced in them because these are software that many people haven't even heard of. So I meant between
hardware, networking, or operating systems.
Okay. Hardware, networking, operating systems. I would say networking, definitely.
Network. Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. And do you let's go back to it's networking for just 1 second. What are obviously that you've been doing that for a very long time. You're expert in that realm. What are the hardware and the functions of networking that you are the most familiar with?
The function, like for example, routers, switches. Mm-hmm. I work with some firewalls. I worked with briefly load balancers, briefly servers. Mm-hmm. I would say I specialize in routing and switching, but a network is never just a router and switch. There's other components. Like for example, even when I was at Cisco at the high touch team, our focus was routing and switching. But many times the customer will call and say it's a router issue. And you may invest 2-3 hours troubleshooting and you discover it's a firewall, it's not the router. So a practice I developed is I kind of came up with some commands, some basic commands to kind of ensure that it's not the load balancer, it's not the firewall, it's not this component before I focus deeply on the router. Because the network many times has many components to it. So my specialty is routing and switching, but I'm also familiar with other products and devices.
Mm-hmm. And do you have experience by any chance with coding or scripting?
Python, I started learning 3 years ago. When and also when I worked at and my learning with Python started at Amazon, because prior to joining Amazon, coding or scripting was something that was on demand. Like let's say when I worked at level 3. We get a call 3 in the morning that the CPU is high. We're not in the office, and the issue kind of it's recurring. Like a call 3 a.m. CPU is high, so we would write a Pickle script or a Perl script or some kind of script that will gather information. That way, when we come to the office 8 in the morning, we know what was going on at 3 a.m. So it was kind of on demand once a month, once every 2 months. But when I worked for Amazon, it was Amazon, like the engineers they do not telnet or SSH and configure devices manually. They have Python scripts for everything. If you want to build a router, there's a script for that. If you want to build a software, a switch, if you want to build a whole data center, there's a script that would do that. They have data centers that consist of 96 devices, something data rates that are unheard of anywhere. But there's also a single Python script that will do everything. And to me, that was totally new. And you have to, so the script will do the job, but as a network engineer, sometimes you have to tweak the script a little bit to customize it to your goals. And obviously you have to identify the right script. But everything was done via Python program. So that was kind of my beginning of Python. And since that time, every time, and so it was the beginning, but it was also a solid beginning because I didn't learn it I learned it like at a very large scale, and since that time, like on my free time, I would learn. For example, Google, they have a friend of mine gave me a class. He gave me a link to a Google class, a Google Python class for beginners. Just a 3-day class, 8 hours, 8 hours, 8 hours, and it's on Google, and it's kind of designed for people who are beginners. So many years ago, I went through that class. I also learned the basics, and since that time, I have a book. It's actually next to me right now. And every time when my schedule permits, I'll read a little bit. So I would say, obviously, not like networking, where I have like over 20 some years experience. Python, I would say, the past couple of years. And I learned as much as I could in the past couple of years. And my goal, earlier we were talking about if I have like interest in the technology, I'm willing to dive really deep. Python and AI, specifically in relation to networking, are areas of high interest for me.
Okay, absolutely.
So I'll be focusing more and more on that.
And do you have experience with Linux by any chance?
Yes.
Okay.
Linux, Unix, yeah.
Perfect. And obviously, this is nothing new to you. Again, you've been doing this kind of stuff for a long time, but I'll just give you a quick rundown summary of the role. So our Google data center technicians, they install, configure, test, troubleshoot, and maintain all of our proprietary hardware, things like our servers and all of its components, and server software like Google's Linux cluster, for example. You'll take on the configuration of more complex components such as networks, routers, hubs, bridges, switches, and networking protocols. A typical day, I tell everybody, involves a lot of manual movement and installation of racks. And everybody should be comfortable knowing that some days could be heavily active depending on the business need, and all the work is on site. So I just want to make sure that this is something you're comfortable with and that you're still interested in.
100%. Although I didn't expect you guys will have hubs, because like a student asked me in my class a couple of years ago, he said, do these hubs exist? And I said, probably somewhere.
Okay. Yeah, no, absolutely. But tell me, what are you looking for in terms of salary? What are your compensation expectations?
I learned to kind of, when I'm interviewing for a position, salary is not the main reason I make a decision, because especially now, more so than any time, like in the past, early in my career, I totally relied on my salary. Now with my classes, I'm able to generate income that's on par with my salary or my pay from a project, or sometimes it may be higher. So my focus is, my main reason, the main reason I want to work for Cisco, for Google, is I worked for Cisco for 8 years and I love Cisco, and this is where I learned the most. That's why I'm saying Cisco. But the main reason I want to work for Google is I learn best from large-scale environments. When it's a large-scale network, high data rates, a lot of traffic, and very high speeds, and when it comes to that, Google is best. So my main reason is to learn from that kind of environment. It's going to make me a better network engineer. It's going to help me make better network engineers from my classes.
Sure, absolutely. So it's we can talk about the salary then.
Exactly.
Okay, perfect. Are you actively exploring and looking for other roles with other companies?
The truth is, I'm not. Okay. And I don't even kind of respond to it. But when I saw Google, I responded.
Okay, absolutely, no problem. And what notice period would you require if you were to accept the position here? Would you be able to start right away, or would you need a little bit of time?
The standard is 2 weeks, because there's travel and everything. So yeah, 2 weeks.
Okay, perfect. And have you ever applied or interviewed with us before?
Yes, I did. I did a couple of years ago, and I think I went to the second, third round. I made good progress, but the position required like extensive coding, And at that time, I was like really beginner. Like if I learned anything at that time, it was probably that Google class we were talking about earlier. But that's natural because even Cisco, I wasn't successful in an interview that required a lot of software. But 6 months later, I got an interview that was looking for like network experience and some minimum software. So yeah. So
do you have a preference of shift, day shift, night shift? Do you have a preference between the two?
see, my class is 8 to 10 p.m. It's only a 2-hour class, 8 to 10 p.m. And I can even teach it from like a Google conference room if I have to. Other than that, I'll be happy like working any hour, any day, even weekends. I'm very flexible. Like when I was at Cisco, there was a requirement to work weekends, and I would volunteer and work weekends for other engineers, and that helped me develop the relationship with them. Like someone would come to me, hey, I'm going to this wedding, hey, I have this family occasion. I'll say, sure, why not? I'll volunteer work the weekend, and that way I built a lot of great relationships, and they were able to help me in other ways too. So I have a lot of flexibility around when to work and how much I work and all that, and it's helped me in my career. So other than the 2 hours, I'm open. Any hour, any day, I'll be happy to work.
Okay, perfect. And then I think that pretty much covers it on my end. Did you have any questions for me that I could clear up for you?
So the question, usually when I meet the technical teams, I usually ask them, like, you gave me a lot of information today and you kind of described well the team and the technology that I'll be working with, the kind of devices, the environment. I have a very good idea of what kind of equipment I'll be working with, like after this call. When I meet the technical teams, I usually ask, what are the short, medium, and long-term goals? Not for the company, but for the team I'll be working in. Because that will give me an idea what I'll be focusing on the next 6 months, a year, what I'll be learning, how can I add more value, what things are they going to be building so I can, learn if there's technologies that I should be learning. And so that's usually my question. And today I'll ask you, what helps you personally succeed at Google? Because success factors are different from person to another. So what helps you personally succeed?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Well, I mean, so I came over from Peloton doing the same kind of role. At Peloton, I also wore a hat in the operations department, so it was a little more complex of a role. But I came over from there. Peloton, they talked a good game about culture, but they didn't back it up, and that's why they're having a lot of problems right now with a lot of layoffs, and they're losing a lot of money. And I came to Google, and they also talked a good game about culture, and I was very I was hesitant to accept it because of what happened. I was jaded because of what happened at Peloton, and but Google really backed it up, and they told me, if you want to succeed here, buy into the culture and be a team player, and don't be afraid to ask for help, and don't be afraid to speak up and share your ideas, and have your voice heard. And that was something that at Peloton it was the complete opposite of, and it was kind of shunned upon, like don't do that, or else you'll be kind of looked down upon. So that's really inclusivity being here, and they really preach upon that, and so to get ahead, it was really just lean on each other and make sure that you speak up and have your voice heard.
And you're right, 100%. Like culture is not something that you just talk about. Culture is an experience. It's an everyday experience. Like even I learned that in my classes. For example, my students, I create a friendly vibe in the class. I communicate with them well. I build relationships with them. I get to know them. I don't even talk, because when they first join the program, I send them a list of 20 people who were previous students, and they're working in America's top 15 companies today. That is enough because I'm now showing them the results, right? But then once the class starts, I'm not talking about myself at all. I'm building a relationship with them. I'm teaching them, I'm training them, and I'm gauging how much they learned. And it's just an interactive conversation about the technology. And that helps me build like a great environmental culture in my class.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, Google's a great place to work. I can tell you that. It's what they are what they say.
I know, and yeah, I know. I heard like I said, a previous student is at Google now. He's happy.
Mm-hmm. Good.
He's happy.
Good.
And he was talking also about. He was telling me that he's focused on a specific role. He started in a specific role, then he is doing some project management now, but he wants to go into networking. He spoke to another team, and they told him to kind of learn some other things, and he likes to come back to my class to learn more so he can make that transition. So what I learned from him, you can really move around Google and talk to people if you're willing to learn.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity for upward mobility within the company, which is another really nice thing that they preach, and it's actually true, which in a lot of companies it's not. So yeah, I very much appreciate that, and I've seen it too as a recruiter. There's a lot of roles that they post externally, and they also allow for internal applications, and there's a lot of mobility internally as well. So it's nice to see.
Nice.
Yeah. So I mean, I would love to get you in for an interview if that's something that you're still interested in. I have the next availability would be around the week of September 16, if you have the availability.
Yes, that'll work.
Okay, so how it works is we do batch day interviews, and it's Monday through Thursday, and you would pick the day, and then you would pick either 10 a.m. or 1 p.m. your local time, and it would just be a series of 3 interviews, 45 minutes each, and then you're done. That's the end of it. And do you have a preference of day or time?
Sure. So we're talking about September, you said...
Yeah, September 16, 17, 18, or 19.
16, 17, 18, 19. Okay. 18 or 19.
Okay. So let's do the 18th then. So the Wednesday the 18th. And do you prefer the 10 a.m. or 1 p.m.?
1 p.m.
1 p.m. Perfect. So as soon as that week gets opened up, I'll put your name down, and then that'll kick off the scheduling team sending you an email, and they'll ask you for an NDA and an employment application. As soon as you send that back to them, they will get your interviewers scheduled and on the books, and I will send you an email which gives you interview prep, and it gets you ready to go. It gets you prepared to the T to make sure you have everything you need. And if you want to jump on another call, we can also do that to get you ready for the interview. It's my job from this point forth is just to give you whatever you need to make sure that you feel ready to go.
Perfect. And is it an on-site or is it a virtual interview?
It's a virtual interview.
Okay, good.
Yeah, no, I think it's really good. I think that you'd be a great fit for the role, and I'm excited to get you on the books and kind of get the ball rolling. So I will, as soon as I can, do that for you, and so just look out for those emails. Perfect.
Thank you, Ryan.
Of course, it was a pleasure getting to know you.
It was a great conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So I will, like I said, as soon as I can do that, I will, and I will be in touch shortly.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Take care. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.